Welcome to a Legalbytes presentation of the Karen Reed murder trial. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel we make sense of the law one bite at a time. If you want more on the background of the Karen Reed case, check out our video on it linked in the description below. But otherwise, you be the jury. Did Karen Reed murder her Boston PD boyfriend John O'Keefe, or is she being framed by local police who Reed says are actually responsible for O'Keefe's death? Tell us what you think. But in the process, the one rule is don't be a dingus. Remember, everyone comes from their own perspective and opinion, and everyone comes to conclusions at their own pace. Agree or disagree, but always respectfully. Okay, let's get into it. All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome back. We are back for the afternoon session of the Karen Reed trial, also known as the Boston Tea Party trial. And today there has been so much tea. There has been so much tea spilled all over the Boston Harbor today. That Karen Reed cross-examination this morning was absolutely insane. If you missed it, definitely worth going back and watching. I think that it was Alan Jackson's best cross-examination yet. It was definitely in my reasoned opinion, I think it was his best one. So then we heard a bit from Kerry Roberts, who we heard a lot about Kerry Roberts from Jen McCabe. All kinds of opinions, like Mean Girls type of opinions from Jen. And so far, it's like it doesn't fit the way that Jen described her as like this like chatty Cathy who can talk forever. But maybe that changes. And also so far, Kerry Roberts, I will say, does appear to be a credible witness for the prosecution. She actually appears that she truly does care about John O'Keefe so far. She's been good friends with him for, since high school, apparently. And she got emotional while they were watching the dash cam footage where the police first arrived at the scene, and it was chaotic, and Karen was, screaming and shouting and running around and all this kind of stuff. And it did appear to be genuine emotion, in my opinion. So, and there's also other stuff that she's already testified to that is, perk some antennas that are pro prosecution points, right? For example, the very first call that Karen made to Kerry was at like 5 a.m. And the very first thing that she said was, John's dead, like something like, I need to find him or something like that. And then she like hangs up, Kerry, and then she hangs up. Things like that early on, there's already some points that the prosecution has scored through her testimony. The question is that going to stick? Is it going to stick? What will things look like on cross-examination? Because we have already had several instances here of witnesses who look great on direct examination. They look great. I said the same thing about Jen McCabe. I was like, why wasn't she their first witness? She looks great. And then only for them to just absolutely crumble on cross-examination. So far, it seems like the better the witness looks on direct examination, the worse they look on cross-examination. So we'll see what happens here with Kerry Roberts' testimony, first continuing with her direct examination, which is what's picking up right now. And then we will get to her cross-examination probably before the end of the day. I think they'll probably at least start her cross-examination because she's already quite a ways through her direct, I think. She probably doesn't have all that much just based on the timeline of events. She's already gone and to pick up the O'Keefe parents to take them to the hospital to go see John. And so, I imagine there's going to be a bit about being at the hospital with them, and then also probably some stuff about interviews with the police and other things like that. So I don't think that there's all that much in her direct examination, but we've got to finish it, and then we're going to get to cross-examination. And it does appear that Miss Little is the cross-examining attorney. So that's also an interesting twist here. We'll see what happens with that. It's probably going to have a little bit of a different kind of a touch because she's different with her cross-examination than Yannetti and Alan Jackson, David Yannetti and Alan Jackson. So we'll see where this goes. All right. Yeah. Yeah, Marmite, the woman lawyer for Karen, is doing the objections. I hope it's not her doing the cross. So that is Miss Little. And I mean, that's the rule. That's the rule in the courtroom, is if you're doing the objections, you're also the one that's doing the opposing questions. So that's an indication of that. So, I mean, hey, she's done a fair job of her own cross-examination so far. I don't have any major complaints about her. She, initially had some rough points, but I mean, that may be just the process of an attorney warming up at trial. It happens. So I'm not gonna begrudge anyone for having some early kind of shakiness, and until they kind of get their feet wet and then they get going. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Also, I see one question in the chat, and I apologize if there are others that I have missed. Pippi Pan, so there's no Ring doorbell cameras that show Karen dropping him off at the house or en route. That show Karen dropping John off at the house. No, there's no Ring cameras at all in this neighborhood. Apparently, the only Ring camera that seems to exist in this case is the one at John O'Keefe's house, which I have seen some commentary around the interwebs about, like, the neighbor across the street actually was like the police chief or something along those lines, and that he had a Ring camera, and he apparently said that it captured nothing. I don't know if any of that's true. I don't know, but this is just what I have heard. But yeah, so far there's no other Ring footage that we have seen in this case. So we'll see. Okay. Let's get on to it.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
So if I could take you back just for a moment, I apologize for this, but just for a moment back to when you first, where Mr. O'Keefe is on the grass, and at any point in time when you observed him, what, if any, observations did you make as far as how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed at that time?
Was he dressed?
Yes.
He had jeans on. I couldn't really tell because he was covered in snow, but I know that I think he had 2 layers on, because when the defendant lifted his shirt.
Do you recall if any one of those layers was like a winter jacket or any kind of heavy coat or anything like that?
No.
I'm sorry, no, you don't recall, or no?
No, it was not a coat.
Now, to take you back to when you were in front of the house and Mr. O'Keefe is in the back of the ambulance, and at some point in time that ambulance leaves, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you know where the ambulance was going?
Good Samaritan Hospital.
And following that, you mentioned that Ms. McCabe went inside the house, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall what it was that caused her to go inside the house?
No, I'll allow that. Not what anyone said.
I think she was going to wake her sister.
And after that, was there anybody else that beyond sort of first responders or police officers, things that any other sort of civilian people show up that you recall?
Matt showed up at some point. Jen's husband, Matt.
And that was before you left, is that correct?
Yes.
And just to be clear, we'll get to this more in a moment, but you had left from the house once, come back, and then left again?
Yes.
And when her husband, Matt McCabe, showed up, which of those times was that, if you recall?
I think he was there when I left the first time.
And did you have any conversation with him?
I just said, he said, I said, I'm going to get the O'Keefes. He said, do you want me to come with you? And I said, no. So he went in the house.
And when you left, who, if anyone, initially when you left, who, if anyone, left with you?
I left with Karen Reed.
And as you're leaving your car, you're driving, is that correct?
Yes.
Where is Miss Reed in the car at that point?
Say it again?
Where was Miss Reed in your car at that point?
In the passenger seat.
And as you were leaving, what, if anything, were the two of you doing or talking about, or what was going on when you left that first?
As we were leaving, she was saying to me, if anything happens to John, I'm going to kill myself. You need to take care of these kids.
And how did you respond?
He's not going to die. No one's doing anything of that nature, or something of that nature, I said.
And as far as you're driving away, Chapman, and you're facing towards Cedar Crest, is that right?
Yes.
And so
Also, that statement that she says that Karen made doesn't sound like the kind of thing that somebody who had also killed her boyfriend would say. Like, and given this, all of the descriptions of her state of mind, it seems strange to me that she would be able to have that presence of mind to be like, I want to make this statement. That sounds like something that a non-killer would say. You know what I mean?
when you left, are you following in that sort of same direction towards Cedar Crest?
I took a right onto Cedar Crest.
And then where did you go from there?
And then I got to Dedham Street and I went to take a right. And then Officer Good let me go to pick up the O'Keefes to take them. I had to give him my phone number so that he could get in touch with me if he needed to. So he did call and he said, do you have Miss Reed with you? And I said, yes. And he said, please bring her back. Her parents have called in a suicide. They said she's saying she's suicidal, so they want her to be sectioned.
And so coming back to that in a moment, but before you had left the scene, you hadn't talked to any police officers or anything at that time, correct?
No, other than my name and phone number, but no.
So you gave them your information and then said, I have to go pick up the O'Keefes.
Yes.
So you get that call from Officer Good, and then you come back to the house, is that right?
Yes.
And during any of that time, you recall the defendants, I know you had mentioned she spoke to Erin O'Keefe. Was there anybody else that the defendant spoke to or talked to while you were with her in the car?
She spoke to her mother. And then I ended up taking the phone and speaking to her mother, and I gave her my phone number and I said, I'm going to go to the hospital. She said, please make sure she does not have her purse. She has medication in her purse. I don't want her to take.
And then when you arrived back at the scene, what happened then?
She just got out of the car and walked to the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, did she walk in? By she, you mean the defendant?
I'm sorry, yes.
And who, if anyone, did the defendant walk from your car to the ambulance with?
She just walked, I think she just walked by herself. I had her phone because I had been talking to her mother. So then one of the first responders came over and said, do you have her phone? And I said, yes. Her mother said, make sure she does not have her purse.
And then following that conversation with one of the first responders, where did you go from there?
I went to go pick up the O'Keefes.
And as far as your drive from Canton, you went to, where do the O'Keefes live?
Braintree.
So your drive from Canton to Braintree and then subsequently from Braintree to Brockton, what, if anything, did you observe about sort of the driving conditions at that point?
I was actually on the phone with Katie Camerano and I spun out, did a complete spun a couple times on 93, right near the Braintree exit. So that when I got to the O'Keefes, that we went back roads to Brockton because I didn't want to go on the highway.
And as far as the O'Keefes, as far as in your car from Braintree to Brockton, that was both John's mother and father?
Correct.
And at some point you get to the Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, correct?
Correct.
And do you know about what time it was that you got there?
I don't know.
When you arrived, where is it that you and the O'Keefes sort of go within the hospital?
John's brother Paul had already arrived. And then we all walked in. We were in the waiting area. John's cousin actually works on the switchboard. We had been talking to her on the way in because with COVID restrictions, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get in or, so she had come out from the switchboard, her office, because she knew there had been an accident. So she came out to greet her family. And then I asked her to take me to the bathroom to clean up and to the chapel.
And why was it that you had to go clean up?
Say it again.
Why was it that you had to go clean up?
Because I had blood on my hands.
Now,
I'm totally muted. Sorry, guys. Elaine, your mic. Sorry, my whole point was to say, folks who are, you know, a bit more conspiratorial are probably thinking, is that a metaphor for something else for your involvement in this case? But you know, just to clarify, is that sorry, I'm totally, I was on a good roll. It was a good comment too. And I was dumb enough to have not unmuted myself after I opened up another bottle of water. But, you know, but I'm clarifying though, I don't see anything in her testimony so far that tells me anything particularly shady about her. The only bit of shadow that precedes her is cast by Jen's testimony right before her. So, you know, but so far, yeah, Dimitri, clear liquid. I know it's vodka, right? I'm not vodka, 6 months pregnant. Haven't had any alcohol since, I don't know, since I found out I was pregnant. So anyway, but yeah, my clear liquid, that's obviously vodka, guys. Purchase is made simple. How many bottles have you had now? I'm on to my second bottle. I know it's absolutely getting wild up in here. So yeah, but to clarify, to finish my statement, and then we'll get back to the actual testimony again, rather than me blabbing on about not drinking alcohol. So yeah, there's nothing here that actually tells me that she's actually being suspicious or anything. So far, she seems very straightforward. Her emotions seem genuine. She actually seems to care about John, which is the first person who's testifying that seems to care about John, other than his brother and sister-in-law, of course, like their family. Like there's nothing in there that told me that their emotions were insincere. So anyway, but it was just a funny thought that I had when she was like, I had blood on my hands, and she gets really emotional, that I was like, anyway, we'll see what cross-examination does.
Ms. Roberts, you mentioned that during part of the drive from Canton to Braintree, you spoke to Ms. Camerano, correct?
Yes.
And during either that drive or the subsequent drive from Braintree to Brockton, who, if anyone else, did you speak to over the phone?
Karen called me repeatedly from the ambulance asking if I was going to come to the hospital. Then she called when the O'Keefes were in the car and said she dropped him off at a party, and Mrs. O'Keefe said, "You just left him?" And Mr. O'Keefe said, "Leave her alone. She's been through enough." She called a few times while we were on the ride, and then she called a lot when we were at the hospital asking if I knew anything, if he was dead, is he dead? She would hang up and then call back, hang up and then call back.
And if you know about how many times was that?
At least 10.
And that same sort of phraseology that she was using on scene as far as if she's dead, she repeated that in the phone calls at the hospital?
Yes.
Now, once you arrive at the hospital and you're able to clean up a little bit, where did you go from there? What happened?
I went to the chapel and I said a prayer, and then I went in and talked to John's cousin, and she said that Dr. Rice was going to ask to meet with the family and that they would be told how John was doing, and that they would bring John's family back to see John. So when I came out, they were being called in by Dr. Rice, and I sat in the waiting area.
And after some period of time, sitting in the waiting area, what happened?
Mrs. O'Keefe came out and told me John was gone. And then she asked if I wanted to see him. So I did, because I figured it would be better than when I last saw him. Maybe he was cleaned up, but it was not. It was worse.
Sorry, ma'am, but as far as say that it was worse.
Sorry. Also, folks in the chat, yeah, all of the statements that Karen Reed is making, those are statements by a party opponent. So when it's the prosecution's witness, and they are introducing things that Karen Reed said, it's a statement by a party opponent, meaning she's a party to the case and she's an opponent to their interests.
Back into a room where John was, is that right?
Yes.
And what did you see?
He was in a neck brace and both eyes were huge. Whereas when I found him, it was only one, but they were like black, almost like filled with, I don't know, blood or fluid. They were huge.
Beyond what you observed in his eyes, what, if anything else, did you see on John's body as you were?
He had scratches on his arm,
Do you recall which arm it was?
his right arm.
Do you recall where on his arm they were?
Like here.
John's test record reflected the witnesses pointing to her forearm.
Yes.
Following that, as far as going in to see John, what happened then?
We came back out to the waiting area. Mrs. O'Keefe wanted to get his necklace off, but I couldn't get it. So her and Paul went back in to get the necklace off. And Karen had called me at some point from the hospital and said, my father's going to be coming. Can you just keep a lookout for him? So I said, so when Mr. Reed, her father, walked in, Mr. O'Keefe recognized him and he said, that's Karen's father. So I went over and I said, Mr. Reed, Mr. O'Keefe would like to speak to you. And then I just stood there. I didn't know what to do.
And at some point, did you leave from the hospital?
I did. I took Mr. O'Keefe in my car and Paul took Mrs. O'Keefe in his.
And where did the two vehicles, where did you go?
I dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house and then I went home.
And without getting into too much detail as far as the road conditions that you described earlier, how were they?
It was absolutely horrible. I told Mr. O'Keefe, if you see a front door in your vision, we are about to hit a house because I can't see where we're going. And my windshield wiper broke.
Now, so you dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house on Meadows, is that right?
Yes,
And Ms. Reed's vehicle, was that still there at that point?
I think so. I don't recall, but I think so.
And then you went home, is that correct?
Yes.
Later on that day or that afternoon, who, if anyone, came to your house to speak to you in regard to what?
There were two officers, but I don't remember their names.
And do you recall which department they were from?
The state police.
As far as the officers that came to your house and spoke to you, you don't recall their names, is that correct?
I don't.
You recall if either one of them was a Trooper Proctor?
It was not.
And where in your house did you speak to
In the dining room.
them? And did they speak to anybody else at your house at that time?
My husband.
And as far as when they spoke to you and they spoke to your husband, where were you when, starting with yourself, do you know where your husband was when the troopers were speaking to you?
I don't know where he was, but he wasn't in the room with me.
And same as far as when the troopers were speaking with your husband, where were you?
I was not in the room.
Following that,
So, okay, they follow proper procedure just when they're not interviewing the Alberts and the McCabe's, apparently. All right.
did you have occasion to speak to any other troopers or members of the state police at any point in time afterward?
I've only spoken to Michael Proctor one time. It was from Jen's house.
And when was that?
I don't know, maybe a couple days later, because Jen and I were re-going over what everything had happened. Mrs. O'Keefe had advised us to make a timeline because she said this could be a while. You guys aren't going to remember something years from now. So sit down, write down what you remember. And I, at that point, said, well, when she first called, she said he was dead. And Jen said, I don't think you've told them that. So Michael Proctor called, or she was on the phone with him, or I don't even know. And I said, could I speak to him? So I told him so that somebody had it documented.
So as far as Trooper Proctor was concerned, that phone conversation, is that the only contact that you have with Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
And if you recall, was it February 1st or so that you met with some troopers at Mr. Cape's house?
State Trooper who?
At some point, did you meet with troopers at Ms. McCabe's house?
Yes.
And if you know, was that on or around a couple days later, like February 1st or so?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I can't be sure.
Were either of those troopers that you met at Ms. McCabe's house, were either of those troopers Trooper Proctor?
No.
And do you recall when?
Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. I will be right back. All right, and we're back.
Air within Ms. McCabe's house?
And yeah, I had a feeling you guys would hear the clinking bottle. It's more water. And Mr. Bice just brought in some more water for me because he's wonderful like that.
You spoke to them?
In the living room.
And beyond yourself and the troopers that you spoke to, was there anybody else in the room with you when you spoke to them?
No.
And at some point, either then or subsequent to then, was there any request made by any trooper from the state police in regard to your cell phone?
To my cell phone, yes.
And do you recall if it was that date or a later date?
It was not that day. I think it was the next day. It was within the next 2 days. They wanted to clone my phone.
And did they advise you of anything or give you any form that you had to fill out and execute prior to doing that?
Yes, I had to fill out a form.
And as far as your phone was concerned, were there any restrictions or anything that you gave to them as far as what they could look at or what they could clone or what they could do with your phone?
No.
And as far as how sort of that process works, as far as the cell phone extraction or anything, do you know anything about that?
No.
And do you recall how long it was that you were without your phone at the time you handed it over to them to whenever you got back?
Well, they took both of our phones at the same time, and we didn't get them back for like 7 or 8 hours.
And just to be clear, when you say both of our phones, you're
Jen.
who else's?
Jen's phone and my phone.
Now, at some point or at any point, did you give any kind of interview or have any conversation with any officer from the Canton Police in regard to what happened that day?
No.
And are you familiar with a Canton officer named Michael Lang?
Yes.
How do you know him?
My daughter and his daughter are friends.
So beyond your daughters being friends, is that someone that you know or that you socialize with or anything like that?
No, I mean, they've come over to my house, his wife and him, one time, but we don't hang out with them socially. His wife and I are friends.
Now, at some point around this date, around January 29th, let me ask you, turning to the next day of January 30th, do you recall what you did that day?
We went over to the O'Keefe's house, my daughter, Jen, and Jen's daughter, and myself.
And following that, do you recall where you went?
My daughter wanted to get dropped off to her friend's house at Mike Lank's.
And so after leaving the O'Keefe's house, is it still the same as far as yourself, your daughter, Ms. McCabe, and her daughter?
Her daughter stayed at the O'Keefe's.
And as far as Ms. McCabe was concerned, was it after dropping your daughter off, did you go anywhere with Ms. McCabe after that?
I just stopped at Mike Lank's house, I think, and then we went home.
And so when you got to your daughter's friend's house, who, if anyone, did you speak with?
Mike's wife came out to the car to see how I was and how the O'Keefes were, and so she talked to us for a little, just asking how everyone was.
And if you know, ma'am, do you know about how long that conversation was?
I mean, I'm a talker, so it's probably a while. I'd say at least 45 minutes.
That was weird. It's weird that she just referred to herself as a talker. When, I mean, maybe she is, maybe she's just different on the stand. It's a very stressful place to be, sitting on the witness stand. Like, let's keep that in mind. Definitely keep that all with a grain of salt. But it just feels like it aligns very much, because that's the exact words that Jen McCabe used, was she's a talker. So for her to say, I'm a talker, I don't know.
Was that a conversation like through the window, or did she get in the car? You know,
I think she got in the car. She was in the back seat because it was freezing.
from that conversation, do you recall anything beyond sort of how people were doing, or anything? Did you discuss anything about sort of what you had seen or what you had heard the day before on the 29th?
I don't recall. It was just a regular conversation. Well, not regular, obviously, but she was more concerned how the O'Keefes were doing, how the kids were doing.
And then after you left from the Lang's house, where did you go? Where did you and Ms. McCabe go?
I don't know. I'm assuming home.
I may have a moment.
Yes.
I mean, this is also the problem with having testimony like Jen's come right before Kerry's, is everything that came up about Kerry during Jen's testimony makes me a little bit suspicious. It makes me think twice about these points of overlap. And then, that has the ability of impacting the rest of Kerry's testimony. So yeah, I don't know about this, man.
Yara, may we approach this briefly?
Okay.
All right, we are going to sidebar. There's Mrs. O'Keefe, who apparently advised Kerry to make a timeline. And there's the rest of the O'Keefe family, it looks like.
Sorry, Yara, one moment. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Little?
Cross-examination.
No questions, Your Honor.
No.
Okay. All right.
That is surprising. That's very surprising and also very interesting. No cross-examination at all. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. I was not expecting that. That is a power move. Will that end up biting them in the butt, though? Because she was actually coming across as pretty credible. Okay. Granted, she was a sympathetic witness. So, maybe it's better that way. It certainly is bold.
Oh, thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The call will call Ms. Laura Sullivan to the stand.
Laura Sullivan. Okay. I am unfamiliar with Laura Sullivan.
And Mr. Lally, I'd like you to tell me when you want me to give that instruction.
I think it's...
So just wave it for me, flag it for me.
Sure.
All right. I'm still, that's really interesting that they did not want to cross-examine her. I thought that for sure they would have wanted to go over at least a couple points there. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Very bold move. Ultimately, so there was a question that just came in about this. So Sorry, did I not save it? Let's see here. Sorry, let me grab it really quick so I can pull it on the screen. I've got to scroll up and find it. This is like one of the hardest parts is keeping track of the moving chat here. Let's see. Oh, actually, first is this one, Grizzly. Why do you think the defense didn't cross-examine Kerry? The reason would be because they don't think that they need to. They don't think that they need to. They don't think that they need to address the things that came up on her direct examination, or that they decided that they are much better off not running some other kind of a risk. That there's some kind of a risk that could be involved in cross-examining her, either with their cross-examination backfiring or something. I'm not sure, but one way or another, they determined that it wasn't worthwhile for the testimony. Rebecca Anderson, I think that was a smart move. If there is a cog machine, she would be a very small cog. Fair enough. That's also a good point. All right. And then there are some more, let's get some more, let's get caught up on these questions. All right. Debbie Faison Cook, thanks so much for catching this for me. My drone and I earlier asked if Robert's testimony is true about bare grass being seen under John's body when it was removed, then why was a leaf blower needed to remove snow from bare grass? They did say that it was actively snowing as they were doing this, so I will give them that. But that's also a good point. El Borate, Alan Jackson was a DA, Alan Jackson was sorry. Let's read this like a human. Alan Jackson was a DA in California. Dear Lord, I'll bet he would convict a ham sandwich. Legalbytes are all Cali attorneys that good? LOL. Not all California attorneys are good. However, I do know that Emily D. Baker worked in the same DA's office at the same time as Alan Jackson. So both of, I know that she's also a very high caliber attorney. So that should tell you about the DA's office at that particular time. Having gone through the Menendez brothers trial during our classic trial stream, which is currently on pause for this trial, of course, I have seen a very different type of LA County DA's office from the early 90s. So I think that things have developed and changed quite a bit in the DA's office since then. But that was a very, very different caliber of prosecutors than the likes of Alan Jackson and Emily D. Baker. Doctor Who 8675309. What, if anything, does the jury need to know? You had to, right? Need to know about the exact driving routes. What, if anything, does it matter whether they went right or left on a certain street? I don't know. It doesn't help that they don't use a map because none of it sticks in my brain. Jonathan B. Question: at a break, can you show the dent on the car, which is shown at 3:28 in the morning stream? It wasn't just the tail light with damage. There also was a dent in the car as well that they showed. I'll save this for later. If we've got time at the end, I will bring it up, but I'll save this for now. I won't unsave this, which I normally do with these once I go through them. JC the Music Man, will Peggy O'Keefe have to testify since she was mentioned as saying to create a timeline? She will not. Well, I don't know. Okay, so if served a subpoena, then yes, but I don't think that. Actually, hang on. Let me see here. Let me see if she's even on the witness. I don't think she is. I see Paul O'Keefe. I see Aaron O'Keefe, both of whom have testified. That's it. It's just them. So she's not on the witness list. So she's not on the witness list unless she's called as some kind of a rebuttal witness. Oh, and I don't know if she's on the defense witness list because I only have a PDF or not a PDF. It's like an image version of it. So it's not searchable. And then a printout of that. So I'll have a Word version that is searchable soon, but I haven't yet taken the time to convert that. But as far as I know, she's not on any witness list. So no, unless there's some kind of a rebuttal situation where they decide that they need to, but there's nothing in that testimony that tells me that she needs to be called. Purchases made simple. Question: if she was to be dropping her daughter off, why were they hanging in the driveway long enough for the wife to come out and hang too? Gossip session. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't exactly know. Oh crap. I just unsaved that question that I thought I was going to save. I'll try to remember. I'll try to make a note and remember about the pulling up a photo of the dent from 3 hours and 28 minutes from the first stream. Okay. I'll try to remember that. And then I'll write it down, and I'll try to do that at the end. So, okay. I was holding on to that for a reason, and I went with habit and unsaved it by accident. Now it's gone. Okay, let's continue on with the testimony. And all right, we're good.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court and jury in the case now hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Laura Sullivan, Sullivan.
And where do you live?
Pembroke, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Pembroke?
Almost 6 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Pembroke with?
I live with my boyfriend and our 3 children. 2 stepchildren that are with us half the time, and then my son, Ben.
And your son, how old is
He's 10.
he? I'm sorry.
10. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And your stepchildren?
Your Honor, may we ask both the witness and the attorney to please speak up so we can hear them? Thank you.
How old are they?
15 and 13.
Now, do you work, ma'am?
I do.
What do you do?
I work in human resources.
How long have you been doing it?
Just over 6 years.
Ma'am, if I could turn your attention to New Year's Eve of 2021 into New Year's Day 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where you were?
I was in Aruba.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of how often was that a regular trip that you did around that time of year?
Yeah.
Okay, so not Bermuda, it's Aruba. I swear I'm going to continue to get these mixed up. It's Aruba, 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 Aruba. Okay, so is Laura Sullivan the one that John O'Keefe supposedly kissed on New Year's? I guess we'll find out. Maybe I should not pause and speculate, and then we can just actually find out.
We've been doing a trip like around that time for, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. This will be our 6th year, I believe.
And over the course of those 5 or 6 years that you've done that, when you say sort of we, how did that start, and how was that expanded, if at all? So
we've been going, Josh and I have been going to Aruba for years.
Oh, she's the sister, apparently. Okay. All right. I see that in the chat.
2021 post-COVID, we decided to bring our children. We had never gone with them before. And since it was post-COVID, a lot of people are kind of stir crazy. And a group of our friends jumped on board. And so we went from just the 5 of us going to approximately 60 people.
And as far as yourself and or the other people, how, is this all at one sort of facility, or how were the bookings?
So we all stayed at the Renaissance, which is in downtown, and we buy timeshares. So it was a timeshare resort where we would purchase weeks that people owned. And so if they weren't going for that year, we would buy a week. So we were able to get, I think it was something, close to 20 rooms for all of us to go for the same week.
And as far as the planning in regard to that year in particular, when did that planning process sort of begin?
It starts approximately a year in advance because the rooms go on sale almost immediately because people want to get rid of them. So I would say it was probably around January of 2021 that we booked our room for that year.
And once you had booked your room, as far as the family and friends group that you were talking about, how was that sort of put out to them, like through what means?
We would, I would post on Facebook, more rooms are available for Aruba if anybody was interested in going. So the timeshare owners would reach out to me directly. Is there anybody else who would want to go? And we would look for any interested either friends or what have you to join our trip.
And so at some point in time over the summer of 2021, say July or August or so, was there someone who, a friend of yours that reached out in regard to joining or possibly coming on the trip?
Yeah, I received a text message from John O'Keefe interested in learning more information about our trip.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of how did you know John?
I met John in May of 2013. I met him at a bar in South Boston with, he was with Pat Rogers at the time. Post meeting John, I started dating Pat, and my son's father is Pat Rogers. And
If I could stop you there just
Yep.
a moment. So as far as John O'Keefe and your son's father, Pat Rogers, did you know or did you come to know sort of what they did for a living?
yeah, they were both Boston police officers.
And did you know sort of what the relationship was beyond co-workers of Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Rogers?
Yeah. They were best friends.
So at some point following that meeting in 2013, you began to date Mr. Rogers, is that right?
Correct.
And what happened?
So in July of 2013, I became pregnant. And in November of 2013, Pat committed suicide.
Oh.
And okay?
Yeah.
Following that, how would you describe sort of the relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, or how did it evolve?
So in November of 2013, I was on a work trip, and I had not had the best conversation with Pat. It was kind of, it just didn't feel right. And I called John and said, you need to go find him. I can't get a hold of him. He won't answer his phone. And so John left his nephew's birthday party and called a bunch of people on the way. And ultimately, Pat was found in the basement of his house. And John was there immediately following, but he was the one that found people to go find Pat. Immediately following that, John never really left my side, as a support system.
And at some point following that, you had your son.
Yeah.
And before or after that, at some point, did you have a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to your son?
It was his birthday, December of 2013, and we went to the Playwright, which is where we had all met. And I gave him a card and I asked him to be Ben's godfather, and he said yes.
So folks asking why this is relevant. This is relevant to talk about her relationship with John, her level of closeness with John. So, how much can she testify to knowing him, his not necessarily his thoughts, but like knowing things about him and, things about his life. So yeah, that's the relevance of all that.
And in relation to your son, was Mr. O'Keefe, was John involved in your son's life?
Yes, very much so.
And how so?
He was every birthday, Christmas. He was always in contact. He was the first person in my delivery room after I gave birth. He was a constant. He was a connection to Pat, and always making sure that, Ben was taken care of in the sense of, being there to tell stories or what have you from his relationship with Pat.
And through sort of his relationship with you and your son, Mr. O'Keefe also become familiar with your family as well?
Yeah. Yep.
And in regard to your family, was there some kind of term or how would they refer to Mr. O'Keefe?
The Godfather. He was called the Godfather to almost everybody.
Now, ma'am, if I can turn your attention back to that summer of 2021, you received a text from Mr. O'Keefe, is that right?
Mhm.
And
So I'm sorry, you do have to say yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
after you received that text, did you reach out to Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I gave him a call because I was excited. I was immediately excited. I gave him a call, explained to him that we had a group of rooms. We were going with, I don't even know the number at that time that had, signed up to go, but it was a lot of kids. It was all of our friends, and that they would have a great time.
And from that, did he give you any sense or say anything about who from was it just himself or like who was coming along?
He had mentioned that it would be the kids, and he said Karen would be joining him as well.
And at that point, at some point subsequent to that, you knew him to be referring to Karen Reed, correct?
Yes.
At that point, had you met Karen Reed? Did you know who that was?
I had not. I knew that they were dating, but I had never met Karen, no.
And in addition to himself, it would have been Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, the defendant, and his niece and nephew, Patrick and Taylor.
Correct, yes.
And if you know, in relation to your son, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's nephew, Patrick, where are they in relation as far as age?
They're like three years apart. 3 years apart.
Now, when you have that phone conversation with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, interest does he show as far as going through?
After, asking a couple questions, I could hear Karen in the background, and he put Karen on the phone, and that was the first time I had spoken to her. He basically said, just talk to her so you can answer her questions.
Do you recall what kind of questions they were or what it was about?
She was interested in the room setup, how many people could sleep in a room, and how the room is set up. You have a king size bedroom, and then there's a kitchen area, and then there's a living room that has a pull-out couch. And I explained that it's a 4-person occupancy room, and you could get a roll-away bed as well.
And following that conversation, when was the next time, if at all, that you had any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed in regard to the room? So
during that conversation, Karen mentioned that she needed her own bathroom and she needed her own space, and that she wanted 2 rooms. And so I put them in contact with a woman that I knew had 2 rooms. For them to, figure that piece out. I don't handle any of that. I put people in contact with whoever owns the rooms. I put them in contact with the woman who had the 2 rooms, and I know that they had, paid her relatively quickly. I mentioned to John that the rooms, I couldn't promise that the rooms would be next to each other, and they weren't. They were on opposite sides of the hotel, but they got 2 rooms.
And when you say opposite sides of the hotel, where sort of where those rooms were in relation to each other and who stayed in which room? So the pool and lobby is in the center, and then the hotel comes like this, and there are pool walkout rooms on the first floor of each. And Karen and John were on this side,
and the kids were on this side, and they both had walkout rooms.
And as far as sort of front door to front door, do you know about how far away they were from each other?
I would say 200. But the hotel is it's small enough, but it was separated by a lobby, the front entrance, the outside entrance.
Now, with regard to your arrival, when was it that you arrived in Aruba?
So the timeshare rooms run Friday to Friday. So we were booked for the 31st through the 7th. Josh's birthday is December 30th. So we went down as a family a day early. And we had friends who were already down there since Christmas. John's timeshare room woman reached out and said, hey, we're leaving early if you want to arrive early. So him, Karen, and the kids actually came down on the 30th as well. They were on the flight following us. And then the rest of the 60-ish people, however many were there, showed up on the 31st.
And so from that first day that you arrived there, as far as when you got there on the 30th, when was the first time that you saw John, or when was the first time that you saw anyone from that group?
It was, we were at the pool, so it was not long after they had landed. He texted me and said, we're here. And Ben and I jumped out of the pool and went to the lobby to see him. And then on the way back from the lobby, I saw somebody banging on the window on the left-hand side of the rooms, and I didn't know who it was. And then I saw Kaylee, and I was like, oh, well, that must be Karen.
And again, was this the first time that you had seen Karen face to face or met Miss Reed?
Yes.
So that also, okay. So that testimony initially about the 2 rooms and the separate bathrooms and that kind of thing. So that sounds like that could be that she wanted the separate room for Kaylee and Patrick, I think is the other one, right? For the niece and nephew. Which makes a lot more sense. If at first it sounded a bit more high maintenance, but if you've got 2 kids that are coming with you that are like junior high school age, they don't want to share a room with you. You don't want to share a room with them. You know what I mean? Like, have them close by, of course, but like give them a little bit of autonomy. That's what they want. That's what you want. So that makes a lot more sense to me now that she's kind of detailed that.
And just for clarity purposes, as far as Ms. Reed is concerned, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's right there.
Just has a record reflect identification of the identified.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, after you see this person bang on the window and you recognize Kaylee, what happened?
She came out. She gave me a big hug, said, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I recognized you from pictures.
And following along from there, what happened then as far as the day was concerned?
So as I mentioned, it was Josh's birthday. We had already made plans to go out for dinner. Our friends who had been there since Christmas have a 17-year-old daughter who watched our children so we could go out for dinner. I mentioned it to John. I said, we'll just add you to the reservation. You can join us for dinner. The kids can stay with Chloe. And they said, absolutely. So we all went out for dinner that evening to Screaming Eagle.
And Screaming Eagle, where is that in relation to the hotel, the rents?
It's probably about a 15-ish minute cab ride.
And when you arrived there, what, if anything, do you recall about sort of the dinner or how it went?
So we were sitting outside on the patio. He seemed distant.
Oh.
And I asked him if he was okay.
No.
And he
Don't make us.
At some point, does your sister come out to the pool area after putting your mother to bed?
Yeah, so
Okay, hang on. We were behind.
friends
here.
to show up.
Now, amongst the rest of your friends that showed up, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how
Wait,
many-
I don't think we even saw this part yet.
The waiter
you
Hang on.
had tell where his
miss
the relationship was beyond coworkers.
Yeah. What?
No,
Ah,
for
crap.
like-
Sorry, guys. Oh,
that-
no.
interested friends and that they would have a great time.
Okay.
Saw John, or when was the first time that you saw anyone from that?
It was we were at the pool, so it was not long after they had landed. He texted me and
Okay.
said,
We definitely saw
Some-
this part.
See this person.
Said-
What happened then, as far as the day was?
"Screaming Eagle."
We're almost there. I'm sorry, guys.
Our
Like,
friend Laura.
it tried to skip to
Do
live.
you recall about the dinner, or sort of
There we go.
what happened? I think.
So we, the waiter came over. He started taking drink orders. Karen placed her order. I placed mine. Laura placed hers. Dave placed his, and then Josh ordered a dirty martini with blue cheese stuffed olives.
Objection.
I'll allow it. I don't know where it's going, and you can move to strike unless you wanted to see me, Mr. Yannetti. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, relevance, absolute relevance. Who cares who ordered what he drank, you know. Okay. So now we're gonna catch up a little bit here on this sidebar. And the judge was like, I don't know where this is going. Okay.
So, Ms. Sullivan, turning back to at the restaurants, the drinks that are ordered, people have what they have. And at the end of the evening, as far as the bill comes at some point, correct?
Correct.
And what, if anything, do you recall about that?
Karen had paid the bill prior to us receiving it.
The horror.
And
I'm horrified. I'm absolutely horrified because I'm picking up a pseudo East Coast accent now. The horror that she picked up the bill. Anyway, that's not what they mean, of course, but that's just a funny detail.
what, if any, reaction did you or anyone have in regard?
The entire table was kind of taken aback, said it wasn't necessary, wanted to Venmo or give cash or something along those lines. And she declined, saying that she was honored to be there and wanted to pay for it.
Turning your attention to the following day.
This is very interesting also as a window to how Karen is when she's new to a group of people that is familiar with John and like wanting to be accepted by those people. I think about that because there's been so much here about Karen being the outsider. And so, and that having an impact on how she's treated by the McCabe's and the Alberts and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I Dollyhood, character witness. No, I see that in the chat. But this is a prosecution witness. This is not coming up on any questioning by the defense here. So this is not something that should be struck as improper character witness or character testimony, because it's good character about Karen Reed that's coming out on prosecution. It's a little bit befuddling. It's a little interesting. But yeah, interesting. It's just interesting to see an example of how Karen is with like trying to be or wanting to be accepted by a group of people that knows John, like through her, like that she's trying to, welcome her or be welcomed into in John's circle. You guys probably, I hope you understand what I mean.
What, if anything, do you recall about the next day being that would have been, I'm sorry, the 31st, is that correct?
Yes.
So turning your attention to December 31st, 2021, what, if anything, do you recall about that day in specific regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his
John was very vocal on the 30th on how he just wanted to sit in the pool and watch the Alabama game.
And he was a pretty big Alabama fan, is that correct?
Yes.
And so over the course of that day, what, if any, interaction did you have with either, starting with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, interaction did you have with him?
I saw him in the pool. I know he was sitting at the pool bar watching the game with Josh. I saw the kids. I recall seeing Karen. I don't remember if we spoke or not. But it was mostly in the pool because we were waiting for the rest of our friends to show up.
Now, amongst the rest of your friends that showed up, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have 2.
And brother or sister?
I have a younger brother and a younger sister,
And with reference to your younger sister, what's her name?
Marietta.
And how much younger than you is Marietta?
She's 10 years younger than me.
And was Marietta Sullivan, was she coming in on that day as well?
She was.
And do you recall about what time it was that she arrived or that she came to the hotel? When was the first time you saw her?
It's tough to remember, but I want to say everybody showed up on one of the first or second flights that came out of Boston. So I'd say she was there by 1 p.m.
And if you recall, what, if any, plans were there as far as dinner was concerned on that evening in New Year's Eve?
So what we tend to do is book reservations, and if people are interested in joining, they can join us. And that night we had approximately 40 people going to have dinner on the beach at Moomba Beach. Around, I want to say it was like 7 o'clock. We had our reservations for.
And did Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, Ms. Reed, join you for dinner that evening?
They did not know.
Now, let me take a step back just for a moment. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, prior to your arrival in Aruba, did you have her phone number or did you have any way of contacting her?
No.
And when was it that you got Ms. Reed's phone number?
John had added her and I and Chloe to a group text the night that we had gone out for dinner to make sure that we could all communicate with Chloe to make sure the kids were okay.
So you got her phone number in relation to watching the kids as far as Patrick and Kelly and your children and everybody.
Correct.
Now, if you recall, you go out to dinner, you think the reservation was about 7 or so. Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to the hotel?
I want to say it was around 9:30, 10 o'clock by the time my group got back. I know there was a couple different seatings. So we probably got back around like 9.
Sorry, I see folks in the chat talking about Chloe's in the chat. What is she doing looking after the kids in Aruba? How did she get to Aruba in the first place? That's funny.
9:30, 10 o'clock.
And as far as your group was concerned, your sister Marietta, was she within your group that went out to dinner?
Yes. Yep.
And beyond your younger sister Marietta, did you have other sort of immediate family with you on this trip as well?
My mother was with us as well.
And with regard to your sister Marietta and your mother, what, if anything, was there as far as where were each of them staying?
So they had their own room. I think it was a couple away from us on the 5th floor.
Is that the top floor as far as this hotel is concerned?
Yes.
Now, once you arrived back from dinner, where was it that you and your group went?
We go to the pool area. The kids can swim. We ring in the new year at the pool bar, watching it on the TVs, and then watching the fireworks.
Now, when you came back to the hotel and you went at some point to the pool area, your sister Marietta, do you know where she went?
She actually, when we got back from dinner, she went up to her room with my mom and essentially put my mom to bed because she didn't want to be up anymore. But she went to go change as well.
Now, when you came down to the pool area, as far as Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed was concerned, did you see them in that area?
I saw John, I want to say around 10:30-ish. I don't know the exact time. It was definitely before midnight.
And where in relation to the hotel did you see him at 10:30?
He was standing behind me at the pool bar.
And at some point does your sister come out to the pool area after putting your mother to bed?
Yeah, so right before I saw John at the pool bar, I saw my sister. She came out and she was visibly upset.
And, Your Honor, in regard, excuse me, to the instruction that you had requested about this, maybe.
All right, thank you. So jurors, you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by Ms. Reed. Be mindful that the defendant is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictments. The witness's testimony may not and indeed must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she has a propensity to commit the crimes with which she has been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here, but you may consider the acts solely on the limited issue of the state of mind of the defendant and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed the act or acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe, as it may go to motive. And just for the records, my findings are the same that I made at sidebar previously. Go ahead.
Interesting. That is quite the instruction. I'm glad that it comes before whatever this testimony is. But it sounds like it's going to be something related to some potential criminal liability or an accusation thereof. Interesting. All right, here goes.
Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Now, with regard to, at some point, your sister comes out to the pool area where you were, is that right?
Correct.
And you know where Mr. O'Keefe was at that point?
I do not know.
And when your sister comes out to the pool area, what happened?
She said,
Objection.
Yeah, that's sustained. I thought you were doing something else.
When your sister comes out to the pool area, how would you describe her demeanor when she comes out?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
she was
Visibly
frustrated.
upset. Yeah.
And at
But
some
she did
point,
say.
did you have a conversation, without regard to what the conversation was, at some point, did you have a conversation with her about something that had just happened?
Yes.
Now, following that conversation with your sister, at some point subsequent to that, Mr. O'Keefe come back out to the pool area.
After I spoke with her, yes, he came out to the pool area.
And you know about how long a period of time it was between the time that your sister came out to the pool area and Mr. O'Keefe came out to the pool area?
I mean, I would say approximately 20 minutes, but I don't really know exact timing.
Now, when Mr. O'Keefe came back out, did you have any conversation with him?
I did.
And can you describe that conversation?
All right, is this the instruction that you were talking about instead of the other one? All right, so jurors, I have another instruction for you. So you're about to hear evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe. Is that accurate now, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
All right. These statements are being admitted only for a limited purpose of establishing John O'Keefe's state of mind. You're not to consider this testimony as proof that the defendant has a bad character or propensity to commit crimes. The testimony of witnesses recounting conversations with Mr. O'Keefe can only be used as they go to the defendant's motive or intent on January 28th or 29th, and only if you find that the defendant was aware of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind at the time of the crime and would be likely to respond to it. There need not be direct evidence that the defendant learned of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind, so long as you reasonably can infer from the evidence that she did learn of it. Okay, Mr. Lally.
This is subject to our objection.
Yes, yep.
So, Ms. Sullivan, if I could take you back again. So Mr. O'Keefe comes out, you have a conversation with him. Can you describe to the jury what that conversation was?
I turned around and I was pretty shocked to see him. I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Did Etta and Karen have words?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, that's not what Etta said." And I asked him if everything was okay. And at that time, his phone was lighting up, and it looked like calls and texts, and it said Karen on his phone.
After you make that observation, what event did you say to John?
I asked him if he needed to take it, and he said, yes, she's crazy. I got to take care of this.
And was that the last time that you saw him on New Year's Eve?
It is.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, New Year's Day, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed at all on that day?
I did not. I saw the children, but we didn't see them that day, no.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, being January 2nd, what was sort of the plan as far as what was going on that?
Our hotel has a private island. The hotel that we stay at has a private island, and we rented all 8 of the cabanas between the 60 of us that were there. And when the cabanas went on sale, I had reached out to John and asked him if he wanted me to get him one. And he said, sure. So I booked one for him, and he paid me for that cabana. So we all went out that morning. And it was probably around, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't there yet. And so I sent him a text and I said, are you coming, or do you want me to sell this cabana? Because there was other, couples there. At least he could have made, the money back. And he asked me who was there. And I said, everybody. And I named off a couple names. I'm not really sure, but I said, everybody's here.
And when you said that, how did Mr. O'Keefe respond?
He said, well, apparently I made out with your sister the other night, according to Karen.
Now, is that the first time that you had heard that?
Yes.
So fair to say whatever you had heard from your sister on December 31st was not that.
Objection.
Yeah, that's
No, I'll allow that.
well,
Correct.
that's still. I don't like that. I feel like that's still hearsay.
And what was your reaction when Mr. O'Keefe told you?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I was shocked. I immediately found my sister and said, did you make out with John?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, when you went to talk to your sister, who was it that your sister was with when you went to talk to her about this?
I don't recall who was standing near her. Maybe my mom. I don't know.
As far as your sister was concerned at that time, was she dating someone?
Yes,
And the person that she was dating, was that person on the trip as well?
he was. Yes.
And was that person that she was dating that was on the trip as well? Were they at the cabanas on that day?
They were. Yes.
Now, as far as you have some conversation in regard to your sister, and then at some point you go back and have further conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Yeah, I said I texted him back. I said I just talked to Etta. She said absolutely not. That did not happen.
Objection.
Yeah,
That's sustained. I'll strike that.
That's definitely hearsay. So folks, this is kind of like tricky territory because some of these statements can come in, some of them can't. So the statements that are said by John O'Keefe, that was what that whole instruction was about. Or the second instruction was that there were statements being made by John O'Keefe that only go to potential motive or intent by Karen Reed, but only if you think that Karen Reed knew of John O'Keefe's state of mind. So basically this gets to what the prosecution is claiming, which is that Karen Reed was jealous of John O'Keefe and that's why she killed him. Okay. That's their theory.
Now, at some point after that exchange, did Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed and or the kids come out to the cabana area?
They did. Yes.
And at any point, how would you describe sort of how Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed was acting when they came out to the cabana?
Karen immediately went in the water. I just recall her being like floating in the ocean for a good chunk of the day. John was hopping around from the different cabanas, talking to people. One of my favorite pictures of him is with my son from that day.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe once he came out to the command area?
No, we kind of just kept it light. We didn't really talk about anything that had happened. I was just kind of trying to stay out of it for now.
And following sort of the Cabana situation or the Cabana day, what happened then?
Suppose that day, I think I saw John one other time. I saw him in the pool. It was the one time that him and I were alone. He didn't seem like he was himself.
I'll allow it.
He seemed distant, and I asked him if he was okay. And he kind of just, shrugged it off. And I said, are you happy? And he kind of, just rolled his eyes and shrugged it off. I said, well, something along the lines of life is too short to not be happy. And he goes, well, Laura, it is what it is. And I did ask him if he wanted to talk about it. I said, do you want to talk about it? And he's like, not really.
So following that exchange in the pool area, when was the next time that you saw him?
I had spoken to him. We all went on the Jolly Pirate. We had all bought tickets in advance, so we had basically rented the whole boat for everybody to go. We had bought 4 tickets, and we had gotten a bus from our hotel. And he didn't show up for the bus and wasn't answering my calls or my texts. And then we finally got down to where the boat was. The boat was about to leave, and he messaged me. He's like, not going to make it. Kids slept late. And so I didn't think anything of it. Then after that, I saw him and Karen the night before they left. They ended up leaving a day or two early so that the kids could get back to school.
And when you saw them, where was that in relation to?
Right outside the hotel is a marketplace that has a bunch of restaurants and arcade. I was sitting at the 5 o'clock somewhere bar that looks into the arcade with my best friend Val, and my friends Dave and Laura and Karen and John walked up.
What, if any, conversation did you have with either Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant at that time?
Karen grabbed me and she said, hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't, and I would like to pay for some of your sister's room.
And how did you respond to that?
I said it's absolutely not necessary. Just an apology will do.
And did she persist in wanting to pay for the room?
She did.
And how so?
She just said, I will apologize, but something along the lines of, I want to pay for some of her room. Can I just have her room number? I don't remember if I gave her the room number or not. I don't really know.
And with regard to that trip, when was the next time, or when was the last time that you saw her?
So, the day that they were leaving, I saw him by the pool. He came up, he gave me a big hug. He said, I love you. This was a great trip. Thank you so much. And I said, well, you're definitely in again for next year. And he said, absolutely.
Oh, that's hard.
And that was the last time I physically saw him.
And so that conversation, just turning back for a moment, as far as with regard to Ms. Reed, you know what day that would have been, as far as in relation to when they were leaving? Early January, 32nd?
I want to say it was the 5th. I want to say it was January 5th.
So, the issue I have with that theory by the prosecution then is it seems like this wasn't a problem that, unless they introduced some other kind of testimony that after the end of this trip, things festered between them, that she apologized. She said, she made this mea culpa where she's like, I thought I saw something that I really didn't. like this is my brain going kind of crazy because of insecurities, essentially, and she apologizes. She goes all the way to apologize to Laura Sullivan, and then she said that she's going to apologize to her sister Marietta. We don't know from this testimony so far if she actually did apologize to Marietta, but she said that she would, and she paid for part of the room. We do know that much. Like, that seems then that this whole controversy was a big fight that they had over some kind of a misunderstanding, and that it got resolved before they left Aruba. So like, this idea that it's festering all the way until January 28th, 29th seems strange to me. Like, there needs to be something to show that this is somehow a continuing controversy between her and John. I don't buy this theory as a motive between the two of them. But let me know what you guys think. Maybe I have a different, perception of this. Maybe I know that there are folks that are watching that are also pro prosecution, because every single poll we've got has like 5 to 7% of the people are voting, that she's guilty. So folks, let me know what you think. To me, it's just, it seems like this is inflated by the prosecution, and it's a little bit of a nothing burger.
Now, after Aruba, did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe after that?
I talked to him via text a couple times about a couple different things, but one of them was, as I mentioned, we start planning a year in advance, and I said, rooms are coming available. Are you in? And he said, let me recover from this trip first.
Now, ma'am, if I could turn your attention to Saturday, January 29th, 2022. Recall that day?
I do.
And at some point that morning or during that day, did you get a call?
I did. I received a call from,
Objection.
I'll hear that she received a call from somebody.
Yeah.
I've received a
It's not hearsay for her to testify that she received a phone call from someone. It is hearsay for her to testify to the substance of that phone call.
call from my aunt.
And what did you learn in the call from your aunt?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
That John O'Keefe had passed away.
And after you hung up the phone with your aunt, what did you do with them?
Objection.
I'm here to subject to striking.
I called him. I called anybody's number that I had associated with the family. I ended up calling Kaylee. I texted Kaylee. I texted Karen.
And without any regard to what Kaylee said, did Kaylee respond to you via text?
She did.
And then at some point, did the defendant, Ms. Reed, respond to you as well?
She did.
Was that a phone call or a text, or how did she respond?
It was a text later that afternoon.
And do you recall what she said in the text?
She said, "Hi, Laura. John has passed." And
Recall what, if anything, you responded to that?
I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And she said, "We found him in the snow at 5 a.m.
And what, if anything, did you ask her, or how did you respond?
I said, "What happened?" I just recall, kind of going into a tailspin, asking a bunch of questions. And she mentioned, she said, "I don't know. We were both at the same party. I didn't go in. I went home."
That sounds like that's a reference to 34 Fairview. I mean, because obviously that's the only place that she says that he went into and she didn't. So interesting. That actually seems to align with what the defense says happened. But if she actually also hit him, that also could align with what the prosecution says happened.
I may have a moment, Kay.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So we will see cross-examination. Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
You were not present at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
You were not present at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022.
It's not.
Yet you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, visited you at your home all the way in Pembroke, Massachusetts on February 8th of 2022
Yes.
to interview you.
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything, Mr. Lally?
Just briefly, as far as Trooper Proctor coming to your house, was he alone, or who, if anyone else, was he with when he
He
came
was
in?
he was with another trooper,
Okay. And do you recall who that trooper was?
Trooper Fanning.
Nothing further on.
That's interesting. It's interesting that she was interviewed, but like the kids who were there that night weren't interviewed for like months and months and months and months.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. We'll call Miss Marietta Sullivan.
Oh,
Counsel, I'll see you while we're waiting for this witness.
okay. So now we've got Marietta Sullivan. As soon as I've got this stuff updated here in the chat, I don't feel like we need to hear from her, but okay. All right. Updating the description and all that good stuff. It's so much harder doing this all on one screen. Oh, fun times. Okay. Now we're going to skip ahead. So this is like they really want to reinforce this whole thing. So I guess now we'll find out if she did apologize to her. If she apologized to Marietta, I don't see this being a thing that festered between the two of them. Because it takes a lot to apologize to someone who's essentially a stranger like that.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court and jury in the case now hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is Marietta Sullivan. Last name is Sullivan.
And where do you live?
Right now I live in Plymouth.
And how long have you lived in Plymouth?
Since July of the past summer, so not even a year yet.
And do you work there?
I do.
And what do you do?
I'm a director at a memory care community.
How long have you been doing it?
Just over a year.
One question. Do you know anything about cross-examnesia? And can you help the epidemic of cross-examnesia in this case? If you work for a memory clinic, your work could really help a lot of people involved in this trial. All right. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you
I have two,
have? Older, younger,
both older,
and brother, sister?
brother and sister,
And your sister, what is her?
Laura Sullivan.
And what is sort of the age difference between yourself and your sister?
We are 10 years apart.
Now, if I could turn your attention to New Year's, specifically 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where it was that you were or where you were going for that time?
Yes, sir. We were going to Aruba for a family trip.
And is that sort of an annual family trip?
It has become since then. It was the first time I had attended.
And do you recall sort of the time frame on that trip as far as when you were leaving, when you were coming back?
So we left on Friday the 31st, and we returned the next week, Friday the 7th.
And when you say we, who is?
My mother and I flew out together with another group of people to meet my sister and brother-in-law down in Aruba.
And at that time, so to meet them down there, had your sister Laura, had she flown down prior to you?
She had, yes.
And at that particular time, were you dating someone?
I was seeing somebody, yes.
And the person that you were seeing, was that person coming on the trip as well?
He was, yeah, the day after we got there.
So your sister arrives on the 30th, you arrive on the 31st, and the person you were seeing arrives on the 1st.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you arrived there, do you know about how many people were on this trip?
I would say over 30, upwards of, I would say over 30 is the best estimate I could give you.
And as far as this trip was concerned, do you recall where you stayed?
Yep, we stayed at the Renaissance Aruba.
And is that someone that you stayed on this occasion as well as subsequent occasions?
Yes.
And on the 31st, when you and your mother arrived, do you recall about what time of day it was that you got there?
So our flight landed around 3:30-ish. I would say we weren't at the hotel much later than that.
And with regard to the hotel has a lobby area, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe to the jury sort of what does that layout look like? What does the lobby look like?
Sure. So right when you walk in the front doors, right in front of you is the check-in desks, 3 or 4 of them in front of you. To the left of you, when you come in, is a hallway to one side of the hotel. To the right of you is a bank of elevators that leads to another hallway that leads to the other first floor side of the hotel. You're in a big lobby, and then directly across from where the elevators are is the entrance to the pool area.
And when you arrive there at some point in time in the late afternoon of the 31st, you obviously check into your room, and then following that, where do you go from there?
So we checked into our room, and then happy hour was starting around 4:30. So we met everybody down at the pool for that time.
Is there a bar in that area of the pool?
Yes, pool bar.
And so when you get down to the pool bar area, who, if anyone specifically, did you see or did you run into?
So first ran into my sister, gave her a hug, the rest of the kids and my brother. As soon as I got into the pool, I ran into Johnny and a couple of our other friends that were sitting at the pool bar down there.
And with reference to who you referred to as Johnny, what's his last name?
John O'Keefe.
And that was someone that you knew at the time, is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you know his face?
He was a very, very dear family friend. He was very close to my sister, subsequently became very close to me and my family as a result. And he was my nephew's godfather.
And fair to say that you had known him for some substantial period of time?
Yeah, since Ben's father unfortunately passed away.
So at this point in time, when we're talking about turning from 2021 to 2022, how long had you known Mr. O'Keefe at that point?
Oh man, probably about 8-9 years. It's as long as my nephew's been alive.
And when is it that you would see, or how often would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Family parties, any family party that we threw, kids' birthday parties, and my sister's Christmas party that she would throw every year.
Okay, so this is going to the familiarity aspect, just like, you know, what was happening with the background with the last witness. John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. Is that carbonated water? It looks yummy. What brand, if you don't mind sharing? It is carbonated water, and unfortunately, I can't pronounce it. So I'm so sorry. I can't help you with it. But it's the water that like the hotel here stocks all over the place, and that they use in like the hotel restaurant and stuff. That's why Mr. Bites was able to like bring me more of them, was because he had brought me dinner during the break and absolutely crushed I absolutely crushed the sandwich that he brought for me, because he is wonderful like that, and helps to keep me going during these trial streams. All right, let's continue.
And how would you describe sort of the nature of your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
He was similar to a big brother to me. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times. So I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
Now, when you saw Mr. O'Keefe at the pool bar after you arrived there, what, if any, conversation did you have with him, or what, if anything, were the two of you doing around that?
So I went up to him in the pool. He had his Alabama hat on. He expressed to me that he was excited to watch the Alabama football game at the pool bar. Given the circumstances, we were in a beautiful tropical place, and he got to watch his favorite college team play football. And he said that's all he really wanted to do for the day, was be able to watch that game.
Now, at this point in time that you're talking to Mr. O'Keefe, were you aware of him dating anybody? Had you met anybody that he was dating at that time?
I had not met the person that he was dating. I had heard about her through family friends and other people that were on the trip.
So as far as the other sort of family events that you would see Mr. O'Keefe at, Ms. Reed or his girlfriend at that time wasn't there with him?
No.
So after the time that you spent at the pool bar that afternoon, do you recall what else you did that evening?
Yep. So most of us in the group had dinner reservations. I believe they were around 7 p.m. and we were all getting ready to leave the pool bar to get picked up around 6:30.
And as far as fairly large group that went out to dinner that night?
Yeah, most of us.
And was Mr. O'Keefe part of that group that went out to dinner?
He was not.
Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to or returned to the hotel?
Most of us got back a little after 9. Taxis were kind of crazy to get, so little after 9.
And when you got back to the hotel, where did you go?
I went upstairs to check on my mom. She had gone in a bank of taxis before me, so I went upstairs to make sure that she was up there and safe and in the room.
And so however long you spent up in the room with your mother, at some point did you come back?
I did.
And when you came back down, by down, I mean, do you recall where you were staying in the hotel?
Yep. So we were on the 4th floor of the hotel. So I took the elevator up and then I took it back down to the lobby.
And at that point in time, when you're getting back from dinner and going up to the room and coming back down, were you aware of where Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and nephew were staying?
Yeah, I knew where they were staying. Yes. Room wise. Yep.
And where was that in relation to the lobby?
1st floor.
So lobby's on the 1st floor, their rooms are on the 1st floor.
Yes.
So when the elevator gets down to the lobby level, you get out. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what if anything?
So you have to
Sorry.
say, okay.
You just have to answer yes or no.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. So the elevator gets sent down to the lobby. You walk out. Who, if anyone, do you see when you come out?
So when the elevator opens up, the first person I saw was the attendant standing behind the desk. I didn't see anybody else in the lobby with me until I stepped out. When I stepped out, I looked to my left and I saw Johnny coming in through the first set of outside doors.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, was there any other sort of term that you would use to refer to him?
Johnny or Godfather.
And, Your Honor, I think this may be appropriate.
All right. So folks, I'm going to say again, that first instruction I gave you with the last witness, that you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by the defendant. Ms. Reed is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictment. So this witness's testimony may not and must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she may have a propensity to commit the crimes with which she's been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts that you'll hear about as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here. But you may consider the act solely on the limited issue of the defendant's state of mind and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed these acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's been charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, motive, and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe.
So, okay, so this is what the first instruction was supposed to go to. It was just a mistake that the judge thought that that's what was coming up in the testimony from the last witness. The last witness had two instructions. The first one was a mistake. The second one was proper. or the second one was like what was supposed to happen. So I'm guessing we're about to see some or hear some testimony about allegedly what Karen Reed may have done or something. I have a feeling that there's going to be something like some sort of like domestic violence kind of allegation or something. That's what it sounds like because of the whole criminal aspect. John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. So can KR only be charged with first degree murder, or is unintentionally homicide on the table too for this trial? Well, there is no such thing as unintentional homicide because by definition, aside from like a couple very, very limited crimes, the vast majority of crimes require some level of intent. So an unintentional crime, generally speaking, does not exist. So in order for her to have murdered or have committed some sort of homicide, that would have had to have been intentional to some degree. But you know, how they get to that intent is another potential argument or question or gaming, I guess you could say.
And for the same findings that I made at sidebar.
Proceed, John?
Yes.
Thanks. So you walk out of the elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you see Mr. O'Keefe. Could you see where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby or where he was coming from?
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby,
Is that where the pool bar is located?
opposite side.
Opposite.
Yes.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, did you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing or how was he acting sort of when he came?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?" assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to didn't know if they were staying in the same room or not. No.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar.
Sorry, the stream is a little unstable at the moment. I know it got a little bit spotty there for a second. So it should be unfrozen now at this point. Okay, yeah, it should be better now. Okay.
When I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down. That's Laura's little sister."
Okay. So you guys want, yeah, I can go back. I'll go back by about like a minute to try to get, yeah, because it got a little shoddy there. Okay.
As Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know if they were staying in the same room or not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
Oh boy.
And just to be clear, when you say Miss Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as the trip went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool when I had been talking to Johnny earlier in the day.
And the person you know to be Miss Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure. She's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
As far as the defendants beyond the yelling, what, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time that this interaction was going on?
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," I went out to the pool bar. So I didn't see much after that.
Okay. That whole instruction made it sound like there was going to be like she saw Karen like hitting John or something, or throwing plates in the room or something like really like big stuff that seems like, maybe we're talking about, intimate partner violence or abuse or things like that. They just got into a verbal argument over, she thought that she probably saw some kind of, like, they were hugging or something and got very jealous and insecure and made conclusions in her head about it, got into a big fight about it. They had a whole problem for a couple days, but by the time they left, everything was resolved. That's the prosecution's big thing on the motive for her to kill John O'Keefe. I'm sorry. How many couples are there in the world who have gone through something where one of the partners is insecure and they get into these arguments and they get into, these sort of insecurities getting expressed in the relationship, especially relatively early on, as one of them is starting to meet other people in that person's life. And you go through an argument, you have a fight, maybe it lasts several days, maybe it lasts a week, but then eventually you resolve it and you realize everything's actually okay. And then you come together and you have this understanding of trust and love and everything, and you just move on with your life. How does that not describe what's happening here? I need more. I need more from the prosecution to establish that this is something that continued to fester after this trip, because otherwise this feels like a huge nothing burger, huge, massive nothing burger with fries on the side. That's just okay. But the other thing about that is that if there's nothing more to this, and no more evidence to suggest that this is continuing to fester beyond this trip between then and January 29th. What this tells me is that Karen is insecure about John talking to other women, being with other women, maybe leaving her for other women. And that also informs to me why she would get so spun up so quickly about him not coming home after they had an argument right before she dropped him off. Assuming that they did have an argument right before she dropped him off. even if they didn't have an argument, if she already has this insecurity and then he does something that's incredibly abnormal, like not come home when the plan was not for her to stay in Canton that night, and he would never, ever leave Kaylee at home overnight without him coming home. Like, I can understand there being multiple levels to her spinning off. Either he's dead or he's cheating on me. Those are two things that could have been bouncing around in her head, like at the same time, or maybe at intervening points in the night. And like, so yeah, like she could totally be, by the time that she's calling people at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, she could totally be spun up by that point. Again, maybe the prosecution has more. Maybe they have something to suggest that this fight is continuing after they left Aruba, but there's nothing so far in this testimony that tells me that it is. And if that is, then this is a very dumb motive, in my opinion.
Could you hear anything as far as when you were walking out to the pool bar, as far as any other conversation between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe?
Not after that first time, no.
You go back you go out to the pool bar, and who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend. And she looked at me and said, Karen. And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
Now, following that, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
Which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
I'll see you at sidebar quickly.
Okay. So, how did we get live? Oh, crap. What? Why did this?
A good witness
Sorry.
this case.
Why did this stream just end on me? What happened? Hang on. They just went to sidebar. Did this end? Did it end for everyone? What is happening? Is this the case for everyone else? I mean, no one else is currently showing the stream, it looks like. Okay, I'm pulling up Long Crime. Okay, all right, we're gonna use. Okay, we're gonna go back a little bit here. Because we were behind. Sorry, guys. We were a little bit behind. Okay. I found the spot in Long Crime. So we are going to end this one and then, okay. Share screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to get the end of this testimony because it skipped to the end again.
Who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend. And she looked at me and said, Karen. And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
Now, following that, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed later on that evening?
I did not see them, no.
And when was the next time that you did see?
I saw them briefly on the 2nd, which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
Okay.
When you say you briefly saw them, about, can you describe?
So we had all rented the cabanas. Each family had one or they were sharing one. I was sharing one with my family down at the end. We got about halfway through the day and realized that their family cabana was still empty. So I saw them about halfway through the day when they did come to the cabana, and I briefly saw Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe at the pool, the island bar, that same day, but there was no conversation.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, at some point in time on that day of the cabanas, what, if any, conversation did you have with your sister regarding that?
So my,
Objection.
I don't know what this is. I'll see, I'll see it sidebar quickly.
Okay. So here we go for sidebar. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit here.
Evidence of staple of that.
Okay. Some kind of an instruction.
Jurors, please be mindful of that second instruction that I gave you regarding evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe for the limited purpose of establishing his state of mind. And I will fully give you this instruction again at the end of the case. So it's the same one that I already gave you. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Ms. Sullivan, with regard to the day of the cabanas, did you have some conversation with your sister Laura in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
did.
And what, if anything, did your sister Laura tell you she had learned from Mr. O'Keefe?
So my sister pulled me aside from everybody and asked if the night that I got into the altercation with Miss Reed in the lobby, if I was making out with Mr. O'Keefe.
How did you respond?
That I absolutely was not.
And when you say absolutely was not, beyond the fact that it didn't occur, why would that not occur?
He was,
I'll allow it.
he was family. He was my older brother. For all intents and purposes, it just never would have happened between us.
And you expressed that to your sister, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Now, as far as the remainder of the trip was concerned, starting with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if any, other interaction did you have with her?
None.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if any, further interaction did you have with him?
None. That was it.
And was that normal or as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned? Objection.
I'll allow it.
That, as far as I knew Johnny, that wasn't normal. He would always come up to us, up to our family, try to be around my nephew, his godchild. And he was always the life of the party and wanted to be around his family and his friends.
And following that trip in Aruba, did you see Mr. O'Keefe again?
I did not.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
Fair to say that you were not at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th
Okay. Same kind
of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
You were not at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th, correct?
Was not.
Yet Trooper Proctor drove all the way to Pembroke to interview you on February 8th of 2022. Did he not?
He did.
Nothing further.
Ms. Lally, anything?
Just very briefly.
Redirect probably.
Ms. Sullivan, when Trooper Proctor came to the house in Pembroke, were you living there at that time?
I was.
And was he alone or was he with another trooper?
He was with another trooper.
And do you recall that trooper's name?
I don't.
Now, with regard to your conversation with Trooper Proctor and the other trooper that day, was it just you that he spoke to?
Just me.
Well, let me ask it a different one.
Okay.
As far as when the troopers came to your house on February 8th, are you the only person from your home that the troopers spoke to that day?
No.
Who, if anyone else, did they speak to in the home?
They spoke to my sister first.
And at any point, did they speak to your sister's boyfriend as well?
No.
And when they spoke to you, and when they spoke to you, where was your sister?
She was outside of the house. She went to go pick up my nephew.
And when they spoke to your sister, where were you?
I was downstairs in my room, which was in the basement.
And could you hear what they were talking about when they were talking to your sister?
I could not.
All right, Ms. Sullivan, you're all set. Thank you.
Okay. Wait for those instructions from the judge. What's she going to
All
do?
right,
During?
so jurors, we're actually finished with witnesses for today. We've finished everyone that we had hoped to finish for today. So we're done for the day. As you know, we're not in session tomorrow, but we will see you Friday, and Friday will be a full day. So please, those 3 cautions: do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it. Let us know. Just leave everything here, literally, figuratively. Clear your heads, and we'll see you Friday night. Thank you very much.
You guys,
All right.
so mad.
Sure. Notes from all of you.
This makes me so mad because we're supposed to have trial tomorrow. We're not supposed to have trial on Friday. I am available to stream tomorrow. I am not available to stream on Friday. On Friday, I am taking a plane from Europe to the United States. So I am not going to be able to stream on Friday, unfortunately. So that's a full day of testimony. I will, however, be coming out with a recap that also is a.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
That also is a.
All right, so hopefully we will start and finish that one witness on Friday anyway, but have a second witness here.
I'll have at least a couple other witnesses.
Okay, but it would be great if we could complete the testimony of that one witness for all sorts of reasons.
I will do my best. I'm hopeful. I am. I'm hopeful. I think we do.
Okay.
Brian Higgins too.
Anything I need to look at or anything in particular for Friday?
Probably, but I can't think of it.
May we approach this briefly?
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, you guys, I'm not going to be able to stream on Friday because I will be on a plane. I'm so mad that I'm going to be missing Brian Higgins' testimony. So unfortunately, and that's also a wedding weekend that I'm going to. So I'm going to try to be. I'm buying internet on the plane. I'm going to try to catch as much as possible for that while I'm on the plane, and come out with a recap over the weekend. So I'm going to make it happen. Well, actually, what also helps with all of that is the fact that Monday is also a holiday. So, and I don't know, there's before today, what I had heard from the judge was that Tuesday there's a trial day and that the rest of the week there isn't. So is she going to say otherwise here? I would like to know before we close out the stream for sure. So the good thing is, yes. So for those of you that are not from the United States, Monday is Memorial Day in the United States. So we've got a holiday. Courts are closed on Monday. So there's definitely no trial on Monday. So this is just very frustrating. Okay. Let's see if she's going to say anything when they eventually. Nope. Okay. No one's saying anything. So we are donezo. We're good to go. Okay. So you guys, unfortunately, I'm so mad. Okay. So like I said, Friday I'm flying. I'm not going to be able to stream the trial, and tomorrow there is no trial. Okay. Well, we're going to roll with it. I'm still going to come up with recaps for them. So unfortunately, you're going to have to see the trial stream someplace else for day 17. And we'll see what goes for next week. If there is trial on Tuesday or not, you know, I am going to be seeing family, so I might take some time to just see family, but I might also, I might also put out some content, while I'm out there because, you know, I am so hooked on this trial. And there's actually a lot of other stuff that's been going on lately in the news that is just so interesting legally as well. But for sure the recaps will happen. I guarantee you guys, you will have a recap for Friday before the next trial day. 100% that's going to happen. So, okay. All right. Is there anything else to that? I'm so mad that there's no trial tomorrow. I'm so mad. But anyway, okay, folks. So we also, speaking of recaps, the recap from yesterday's testimony is being worked on. It should be ready to go very soon. So we've got that coming out. I will be getting the Let's see. All right. Sorry, I'm also trying to capture questions and things. Okay. Sorry. I'm doing multiple things at once and brain's going in multiple directions. Okay, so we've got some questions here. I'm so sorry, guys. I got a little bit like brain frazzled with that news. Okay, so that's what's going on with all that. But guaranteed, those recaps will happen. Oh yeah, the recap for today that's going to be coming out later today. The recap for today's testimony is going to be coming out sometime tomorrow. Hopefully earlier rather than later. But since it's not a trial day, it's folks will see it definitely before the next trial day. So we will have that going on. So, okay, folks, let's get to some questions here and then we will get, oh yes, poll results. Thank you so much. I always appreciate those reminders because I try to remember and typically forget. Okay, here's the results from the poll. Halfway into day 16, which way are you leaning regarding Karen Reed's murder charge? So 1,100 votes. 77% said not guilty. 16% said need more information. 6% said guilty. We're right around these same numbers as before. Okay. Oh, also, and somebody, yes, thank you for reminding me. Here, why are you being slow? Come on, work with me, computer. Okay, now it's working with me slowly. Okay, so at about 3:28. Here we go. Okay. So this is it's gonna be like streamception right here. one second. It's gonna be funny. All right. Okay. With my serious face and all. Okay. So how about this? How about we'll do it like this. That way I'm covering my weird, super concentrated face. So this is the other damage to the car that they were referencing. That's what that looked like. There's a little bit of a dent there from something. So yeah, that's what that looks like. Okay. All right. Also, there was also another reminder here. Don't forget the damage to the car. Okay. Yes. Okay. Cool. Got it. Okay. Now let's get these questions here. Okay. Steph, maybe. Oh, reminder with the dent in the car. Okay. Yep. We got it. So it's personality question. If they're bringing up all this more emotional testimony, would that indicate the prosecution are coming close to wrapping up their case? They are coming close to wrapping up the testimony that is having to do with like the lay people, I think, the non-forensic stuff. I think we're coming to the close of that, but not the forensic stuff because we haven't heard from the medical examiner. We haven't heard anything about his injuries other than what the paramedics testified to. So, so that's, yeah, there's still more testimony for them to go through. And also Brian Higgins. We haven't heard from Brian Higgins. So that's interesting. Which I think he's going to be on Friday. It's like, I don't want to miss a day. Why am I missing someone like Brian Higgins? At least, well, hopefully they don't also then bring in Trooper Proctor at the same time. Like that would make me so mad. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, does every witness have to point out Karen Reed? Not necessarily. They do that when the witness has testified to having met Karen Reed or knowing Karen, like when they talk about an interaction that they had with Karen Reed, because it helps for identifying the defendant and proving certain elements of what's being charged. Alessandra Ramey, question, how much time does the prosecution have left to prove their case? So they don't necessarily have minutes in this case. Generally speaking, criminal cases, I don't think do that. That's more of a civil case kind of thing, because it's a way to sort of restrict both sides from inflating all kinds of billable hours and things like that. But it does seem like, I don't know, they might have a few more days left of testimony, because they still have to go through all of their forensic stuff. So all their forensic stuff, we've got to hear from Brian Higgins. We've got to hear from Trooper Michael Proctor. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. JP Eagles and Cats question is, did it happen more often? I'm so sorry. I think I saw the word question and then saved this and didn't look at it in the context of like what was going on at the time to be able to answer the question. Okay, there we go. All right, sorry. Internet went wonky for a moment there. Yeah, it was frozen. All right, Ashley Roman question, do you think that by not crossing Kerry Roberts that maybe they will call her during her case in chief? I don't think so, because I think the judge will be like, well, you had an opportunity when she was already here, so why bring her back into the courtroom? Yeah, like generally speaking, you have to have a good reason to call a witness back. When they had ample opportunity to talk to her while she was here, judges are going to have a lot of questions about why are you bringing this witness back? Notice question, any recommendations for where to watch the Friday stream? Emily D. Baker is, of course, thumbs up. Emily D. Baker is, of course, a wonderful option. She's got so much great commentary. Andrea Burkhart has started to live stream it as well. She also has amazing commentary as well. I know that other folks that are doing live stream recaps of it. So you've got Ian Runkle, you've got Lawyer you've got Natalie Lawyerchick, who also has some really great insight also. Literally any of those individuals are great people to go and check out for this stuff, for this trial, whether those are live stream currently or doing recaps, but they are all lawyers. They all are giving legal commentary and talking through their experiences and things like that. So all of them are excellent people to watch and to follow along with while I'm out. Shiro Kana, Legalbytes as a lawyer. What called you personally to this trial? It was, I think it was the intriguing aspect of like the boldness of the two arguments of both sides. You know, the fact that it's one side has accused the other of murder and the other side has accused the other side of corruption by local police force and like this whole conspiracy. It's a very bold question. It's a bold question that definitely brings a lot of other questions that have to be answered. So anytime that happens, it raises the stakes. So it's legally, it's very, very interesting. Me, my drone, and I question, can Karen be charged with cursing while on vacation? No, free speech. Also, I mean, although that didn't even happen in the United States, there also would be a weird international law aspect, but no. Heather asked, do you think they ordered the witnesses weird because they hope to bury the jury's memory of potentially sketchy testimony, e.g. Albert's family? I know you say start and end are critical. It could be, but the thing is, like, all of the most important testimony comes from them. So, like, it just calls into question, why are you bringing this case? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of bringing this case if if all of the top witnesses who have the best information, you would think, are the ones that you feel the need to bury in the lineup. It doesn't make sense to me. Dionysia Jaclo, where can I see the witness list? You know, I managed to nab it from both of the witness lists from a journalist on Twitter that had like photos, like images of the list. So I pulled those and then like put them into, I think actually I did. Okay, now we're back. As I was saying, the mods did, I thought I saw something in the chat from, I think Debbie or one of the mods said something about like that there was a link, or maybe Sandy. Someone said something about there's a link in our mods group chat that there's a link to the Karen Reed list. Oh, is that the link that you just dropped, Sandy? Let me see here. Yes, here we go. Okay. From HowieCarShow.com, the Karen Reed trial witness list release. Okay. Thank you for that. So folks, in the chat right here, you can click it because it was dropped by a mod. Thank you once again, Sandy. Yes, go ahead and check it out there. Perfect. Okay. Doctor Who, 8675309. What, if any, are the directions to get to the other streams? Is it snowing on those streams? What, if any, snowfall has been annotated on the route to those streams? You jokester. I love it. I love all the jokes in the chat. I don't know about directions other than links to those other wonderful people. And yeah, sorry about that. But I cannot guarantee weather conditions. Oh, and also, yes, thank you, Heather S. I'm trying to find it in the chat. NBC Boston published the list on April 16th, 2024. So there are other places to get it as well. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, we are caught up on questions and everything else. So we're going to end it for the day and I guess for the week. I'm so bummed. But like I said, recaps are going to be coming out. So definitely be sure to keep an eye out for all of those. Thank you so much to everybody for joining me on this wild ride today. We had a bunch of people in the chat. If you haven't done so already, please do like the stream if you are enjoying it. If you have enjoyed it so far, really, really does help to push this out to more people. So otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and for watching, whether you're chatting or in the replays or just lurking and doing other stuff around the house as we go through this crazy case. Yeah, I appreciate all of you. And thank you to the mods, super chatters, folks buying all kinds of gift memberships for or just memberships for themselves. I love it. You guys are awesome. And as always, thanks to the mods for doing all kinds of great stuff in the chat, making sure everything flows nice and smoothly for us all. Okay, folks, that's all I got. I'm going to see you guys in the next one.